Hello, my friends. Jessica Lily here, and I have something fun lined up to share with you today. I'm getting ready for an exhibition, and I have a frame and a painting, and it's time to cut a hand-cut mat without a big fancy mat cutter. And I do this here at my art table, and I'm going to step by step show you how I cut a map. So let's get started. Okay, so let's get started and talk about what materials, what supplies we need to do this project. First, we need to protect our work board, and I have a very large, like quilter's cutting mat. This is a double-sided cutting mat. The lines are less relevant for this particular project, but the bigness of it is important because we're going to use it to put a whole mat board on here, and we need to be able to get all the way cut down to the size that we need, which is going to be quite large because we're working on a mat for a 16 by 20 that's going into a frame that is about between 3.5 and 4 inches on all the sides. But I have torn a duckle edge, and I want to get the frame in there right. So it needs to be pretty big. The next thing that we need is one of my studio MVPs, which is my old, well-loved and well-used Pacific Arch steel, turn this right side up for you, steel straight edge. You can see that it has this sharp, almost blade-like edge. On one side it's beveled, and the other side is straight. I usually use this bevel edge for most things that I do. I use that almost every day to tear paper, and for this instance, to be able to draw a straight line. I need a pencil. I like to use a 2H pencil for these kinds of projects, and that's what I keep in my mechanical pencil. The 2H is going to make it light and easy to erase, although we're going to do all of our writing on the back. And then rather than have one of those big fancy expensive machines, I just have a little handheld push style mat cutter, Logan brand. It's old as well. It's probably 20 years old, but inside it's, it's in pretty good shape. I just replace the blade and make sure before I get started each time that my blade's not chipped and that my blade's in good shape. But this looks good to me. And we need a measuring tape. I keep a couple different measuring tapes. I have a little bit of a collection of them nearby, but we need a measuring tape to be able to mark our sizes so that we are consistent and make mathematically precise edges. For some of the things that I do, I kind of like guesstimate, and it doesn't really matter the size that much. But for this kind of a project, precision matters, and we have to do the mathematically correct thing to get the right size mat to fit inside of our frame. And so I will show you how I do that right now. Okay, so I've got my mat board over here, and this is my mat board that has been shipped to me from Blick. And when you buy your mat board from Blick, or wherever you buy it from, if you buy it in person, you can prevent things like shipping damage from happening, but this board has kind of been beaten up. So I'm going to work with that. This is how I know this is the back. The back has this label on it, and the other side is the front. This is an off-white ivory-ish kind of colored mat, and that tends to be my favorite. I just buy the same mat board again and again because I know that I like it. And the way you can pick out which mat board you like, I do recommend doing that, obviously, using the same mat board over and over again, because it will help make everything in your show consistent and similar. And I think, in my mind, those kind of details matter a lot. I'll take a note of the quality of my mat board. Maybe we'll look at the front too. I've noticed I've got a corner that's banged up here. This back corner over here is also banged up. It's like banged up all the way to here, so we can't include any of that in our piece. So that's a bummer. And you always want to check the front and see if the front is actually dirty. You can't have any speckles or anything on your mat board. It needs to be clean, but it is possible to do some light erasing. So if you see things like this, you may want to get out a kneaded eraser and confirm that that is erasable before you get too far into selecting that as your piece, because once that's your piece, and then it can't choose a different area. Whereas right now we're still kind of in the phase where we can select which part of our board to use. So that came right up, and this other one is much more subtle and it doesn't bother me as much. So looks to me like we can use any of this face because it looks like it's in pretty good shape. So what I have is the backing board from my frame. So I've got this turned down here so that my label is not at the part that I'm going to use. My label is all the way down here. I want to keep the label on the board so that when I put my board away for later use, I have the label and I can see what kind of mat I have, so I know what my product is. All of these corners were bad, right? So this is my backing board, and I'm going to use my backing board to measure. It's just a piece of foam core, actually. This is a frame that I reuse for exhibitions. It's like a higher quality frame than I use for some other things, but it also matches all the Watercolor Society exhibition parameters. So I'm going to choose how I want to do this. I want to not use this back corner over here. I'm going to cut out the shape that I want to use for my board. So I don't want to include that corner back there up to even here because it's got a messed up corner. And I can do it that way, or I can come in and do it this way, but that seems to make less sense in this context because of the beat up mat board. So I'm going to push myself up against where that bad corner is over there. I'll let those edges go to waste. And I know this fits my frame because I pulled this out of my frame. So for this part, I'm not going to measure. I'm going to just line it up on my board and make sure that this edge is really straight via myself in the video here. Lining it up, making sure that it's as close to perfect as I can. Now I'm going to draw right on this, which is fine because it's my back of my board, it's not the front. So I'm holding down my foam core, which is the back, and then I've got my graphite. But it's a 2H, so it's not going to smear or spread graphite anywhere, which is relevant. If you use a graphite that's more smeary, it might smear onto the front edge of it, and that would be not ideal. And now we should have our shape drawn out. I forgot one more supply that we need. So I have this turned so that the back behind my table is empty, so I can push this back this way. Can you see this line here? It's right there. I think you can. It's like going this way. That's the line that I want to cut. And the thing that I forgot to tell you that we need is an X-Acto blade. Another studio MVP, something I use almost on a daily basis. And I'm going to put a fresh blade in it. So let me show you how I'm going to put a fresh blade in. So X-Acto knife blades are sold separately in like multi-packs, and I buy new blades often and I replace my blades frequently. When I'm done with them, I wrap them in masking tape so that they don't cut through the trash or cause anybody danger. I wrap them thickly in multi-layers of masking tape, but you just open this up to loosen it. The blade slides right in. Close it. If it doesn't close one way, I just twist it the other way. Sometimes I give it a little torque, like a little tension against the blade to make sure that it's nice and closed. And then I'm going to align myself to cut this line from an angle that's easy for me to reach. And this is where this straight edge is going to come in handy. I'm going to cut this whole mat board straight down the side, and I've got this lined up here to match I'm right-handed. I'm going to come off of the board, line this up with that edge of that shape that I drew on here to indicate the total size of the mat to fit the interior of the frame. I've got a new blade on, and I'm going to score it rather than cut all the way through. So I'm going to cut in like 3 or 4 lightly pressed slices rather than one. And I'm going to really push hard down on this straight edge so it doesn't slide. That's one of the skills in this process, is learning how to push down on the straight edge so it does not shift as much as possible. Now when I do this again, I know that it might look like I'm neurotic and do things perfectly, but I'm pretty flexible with my humanity. I don't ever expect any of these things to be perfect. I just do the best I can. So I did 3 slices and it cut right through there, easy and clean. I'm going to come up and see where my slice is. Hold this down steady, make sure my fingers are out of the way. And I've got slice 1, slice 2, and slice 3. And now I've got my mat board cut to size. Now I never want to pull it, I always want to make sure it comes off really easy, but it does. So now my mat board is cut in 2 pieces. This is the side that has the label on it. That's not the piece I need, so that's going to get put away in my mat board collection. And that's a big enough piece to be able to use probably for a 16 by 20 or something. I mean, it's a pretty substantial size piece that's left. And I've got these 2 other edges that I need to cut off. So I'm always turning this. I don't use my mat cutter for this. I just use my mat cutter to cut the interior. I'm always turning this to make it easy for me to cut. So it's turned so that my right hand can access it easily because I'm right-handed. Slow and steady. Now when this comes off, I need to also be aware that it might slip and fall, so I'm going to grab it so it doesn't fall off. Now, because this edge is beat up, I've got this beat up edge with this corner. You can see my pretty matte texture. That's what the front of it looks like. It's got a little bit of a slight texture to it. I love this one. And here's that beat up corner. I might use this like for some other kind of a crafty hoarding kind of project, but not for mat board. It's not big enough to use for a mat board. It's not big enough to put behind a print or anything. So that's just a scrap. And again, that's the consequence of having to order it online. When I can, I prefer to buy these in person at my local Blick, but my Blick was sold out, so, and I had an exhibition coming up, so I had to order them online. If you get them in person, you can pick through and choose which exact board you get and try to make sure you're not getting a beat up one. Okay, got this lined up. Cut off this little piece. Okay, and that concludes our use of our X-Acto blade for now. So I'm going to close my X-Acto blade up. I have long ago lost the lid for this, so I keep this gummy eraser, and I just tuck it into this gummy eraser when I'm not using it, and then I keep it stored blade down so I don't grab it and accidentally stab myself, because that's not fun. X-Acto blades, especially brand new blades, are very, very sharp. Okay, so here's my mat board, exactly cut to size, and here's the front, so we can see what we're dealing with on the front side. I have a little smudge over there, so let's see if that's... Let's give a little bit of a gummy eraser on some of these smudges and see if that's going to be a problem or not. Before I would do this, I would clean my gummy eraser by kneading it. I don't want to stick a dirty gummy eraser on my mat board and make it dirtier. And then compress it a little bit. come in here. See if we can pull back some of that discoloration. Make sure that it's just kind of a store smudge. All right, we're in pretty good shape. Mat board looks good. Let's flip back to the back so that we can work on the side that no one will see. So the next thing that you want to do from here is you want to double check that this fits into your frame. So I'm going to bring the frame over and we're going to check that it fits. Okay, so this is my frame. And like I said before, this is a frame that I've reused for exhibitions before. And until it sells, I will continue to reuse this frame because I love it and it matches my exhibition requirements. It's very lightweight and it's solid wood. And perfect. Okay, so this is a perfect fit. It's in. I feel good about it. And now we can begin to cut our mat hole out of the center. So you may be wondering, if I'm reusing the same frame over and over again, and it's for the same size print, which it is, or not print, this is an original, then why am I needing to cut a new mat each time? And the answer is because I'm not consistent on how I want to present them. And I've decided in this instance, rather than to have the mat board cut over in on the print, which I saved that mat board, so that should I decide to do that again in the future, I have a mat board that fits this frame perfectly, that's cut to 16 by 20. But what I want to do is I want to have a border in between this decal edge that I tore and this mat board that I've mounted it onto. I've mounted it onto a piece of mat board that is the exact same mat board as the front piece that I have. So that's why I'm cutting a new mat board. So we're going to do some math now, and I'm going to write my math equations here on my board, and I'm probably going to pause the video so that I can use my calculator on the phone. We need to know some measurements. We need to know what is the length and the width of our mat board. So the length of our mat board is about 26.75. You see where I wrote that right at the corner of this? Let me scoot this way. And then we need to know this way, 22.75. Also, my frame is not a standard size. It's a size that I like for a 16 by 20 piece. So this piece, though, is not exactly 16 by 20 either, and that's part of what makes this tricky. So let's see exactly how big is our piece. And actually, let's measure that 1/2 inch, or maybe let's a 1/2 inch. 1/2 inch is out to here, kind of more than I want. Let's measure 1/4 inch on each side. All right, so out to 1/4 inch is exactly 20, that's easy, exactly 21 inches. And just so we know, if we were to do 20.75, which would be the easiest math to do, we would end up with that much space around it, which is not enough. So we need to go all the way out to 21, which is going to give us a 1/2 inch total, or 1/4 inch on each side. So that's going to be going this way. We need it to be 21 exactly. And then going this way, probably going to just go to 16.75 here, which is about a 1/2 inch. Now I know I said no estimates, but I'm going to count this as a 1/4 inch here because it's pretty close to that, and go 1/2 inch from that. So 275, so 16.75 this way. Okay, so the math that we're gonna do, I'm gonna do on a calculator, but I'm gonna do, let's see if you can see my math down here. I'm gonna do 22.75 minus 16.75 divided by 2. And I'm going to write that all down. And then I'm going to do the same thing here. 26.75 minus 21 divided by 2. Okay, be right back. I got to go to my calculator. So I have some math done for you, which you may have already done in your head. But 22.75 minus 16.75 is 6, and half of 6 is 3. 26.75 minus 21 is 5.75, and half of 5.75 is 2.875. So that is what we're going to use next. You'll notice that when I wrote down these numbers, I wrote them with little arrows so I would not be confused which one goes which way. The edge that goes up and down, the arrow goes this way, is 3, and the edge that goes from side to side is 2.75. And I wrote that with arrows so that I would know what was happening here. So the 3-inch edge is easy, right? So for here, we're just gonna measure 3 inches. We're gonna maybe do that 3 times. So 3 inches, and that goes from the outside edge. 3 inches, 3 inches. Flip this. Same thing. 3 inches. 3 inches. And the last one. 3 inches. Now from these other edges, it needs to be 2.875, which is awfully close to 3 inches. And I'm just going to go to 3 inches minus 1 dot to make that easy for me, and that's a consistent thing about my person. I know I make work that looks like I'm a perfectionist, but I'm some weird balance between being a perfectionist and also being totally okay with close enoughs. Okay, so that's where we're going to cut our mat. So now we're going to get out our straight edge, and we're going to draw lines over all those things. So I'm lining this up with the dashes that I made. And again, I'm on the back, so I feel okay drawing on this or drawing right over anything. All right, and again, I'm going to turn this so I can access it a little bit better from the arm. Now it doesn't have to go to the edge of the map board because we're just cutting the inside. This square is going to get cut out. And so we do want to draw these lines though, because this is going to tell us, once we have our mat cutter in hand, it's going to tell us how far to come with that corner so that we can get a sharp and crisp corner. It helps me to have my 2 different lights. It's notable that I have a light coming from here. That's my one light, but I also have a light that's second light that comes from here. And this light that comes from that way illuminates this edge of the straight edge, so I could see with precision where that is, and I know where to put my lines. So hopefully you can see those lines. I think they're pretty faint, but I think you can see them. Here, 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 and here. So now what we want to do is double check, make sure Does this make sense to meet our goals? I have learned the hard way that this is a really helpful step, that I can see that it's going to fit in there. So let's put it in the hole, because that's exactly what it's going to look like, right? When we cut the mat, it's going to be exactly like this. So we're going to fit it inside of it and make sure we like the amount of spacing. And I do. It's a little bit like 1/4 of an inch. My painting itself is not completely square, so that's as close as it's going to get. And it gives a nice 1/4 of an inch, which is going to give enough space for a little bit of a shadow, which I want underneath there, and a pretty bevel. And that brings me to a question that you might be asking. Besides custom shape, why would I want to cut my own mat? And that's one of the reasons, besides custom shape, one of the reasons I like to cut my own mat is because the quality of the mat board that you buy at the art store is substantially better quality mat board product than they sell even at the frame stores at the local box shops like Michael's. It's a really beautiful quality product. The mat board itself is thicker. It'll give you a deeper bevel, and that deeper bevel will look nicer. And I'm a detail-oriented person, and that kind of thing matters to me. Okay, so this is the most important part of this video. You want your bevel to cut in at an angle like this, so that in your center, the bevel is showcasing your work, right? So to do that, I want my blade to be pointed this way, and I just keep turning my mat board. I always do it like this. I put my straight edge to the left of my line. I have my hole in the center, my blade in the center. So my blade goes in my center hole, my straight edge is to the left. And some things to keep in mind about this is it's really helpful to have a sharp blade, and don't try to push it in one jerky movement or your hand will shift. And so this is the skill to build. Position yourself so that you can put the weight of your body down onto your straight edge. And I really brace myself there. I really push hard. I'm pushing with a lot of force with this hand down onto this straight edge. I don't want to push against it because I don't want to shift it. That's the most vulnerable thing that could happen here. I line let's line this up so the camera can see. So I've got my board lined up precisely with my line. The little mat cutter has a line on it in the back, in the middle. That's what you line up with this line, your edge of your center. And you may want to go on the outside edge of it a little bit so that you'd rather overcut than undercut, because if you undercut, it's going to have a torn edge, which is going to be soft looking. If you overcut, that extra slice will likely just disappear. So I'm going to be a little bit on the mat side, not on the whole side of that slice. I'm putting my weight of my body down onto my board. I'm pushing with my thumb to get that blade. I'm locking my table. It's on wheels. I'm pushing my thumb down with my blade. I've got my weight of my body down here, and I've got a sharp blade. Now I realize I cannot easily go any further without losing my torque. I'm moving my hand, pushing down again, and I didn't take the blade out of the mat board. And that is our first cut. Make sure that it worked. Give it a slight little lift, make sure it pulls apart easily. This is a lot easier to do with a sharp blade than with a nicked or not sharp blade. Okay, so I'm going to do the same thing here, rotate it. So my blade goes on the same side, right? My blade still is going to go to my left. I'm right-handed. If you are left-handed, you may need to reorient this whole situation, but I always do this the same way. I always put the thing on the left, the knife goes in the middle, And by knife, I mean blade cutter. Brace my whole body weight down. It's better to go closer and then move than to try and accommodate past your point of torque. So this is like my point of resistance, right? If I kept pushing up any further than that, it would move my straight edge. And so my blade, this thing locks the blade down. My blade is still down. As long as I don't move my straight edge, I can pick up in the middle. I'm overcutting just a smidge. Oops, that's definitely pulling apart. And you can see we've got a nice crisp corner here. Line ourselves up again. Start with my hand. Oops, my hand shifted the whole straight edge, so I'm going to come back and readjust. Start with my hand here, overcutting a little bit, push my blade in, go up to the point where it's going to spin on me. Overcut by a little bit, and we have one edge left. Okay, pushing down, overcutting. All right, let's look and see how we did. The moment of truth. This should just come right out, easy as pie. Okay, and look, if it doesn't, if you get a stuck corner, sometimes I like to let gravity pull it, and you just pick it up a little bit and it drops right out. All right, looking good. About a 3-inch mat with an extra 1/4 of an inch for our shadow edge, for that decal edge. All right, so let's put the whole thing together. For this, it's important to use acid-free fine art tape. The acid-free part is essential so that the tape doesn't cause your paper to degrade over time. What I've done is I cut one long strip here, I taped the bottom, folded it in half, and I attached another strip to the top. So here I am attaching fresh tape to the top. Down at the bottom, we can do it again. We'll do a fresh one, right? So I take a long piece and 2 short pieces. And we will first do a bottom attachment. We'll put our tape down. We'll tape the tape down, fold it in half, and tape our tape down again. Okay, and that's going to give us a secure way to get our painting onto this other secondary piece of mat board. Now, the only reason this exists is to support the painting, but also so that there's a background for it to have a shadow against. That's not the backing board, that's the exact same texture and color as the mat board, so that it doesn't have any discrepancies in texture, but instead it just looks like a piece of the same piece. Okay, so we'll grab our painting. And this does not have to be perfectly centered on this board, just roughly centered. So we don't have to be too particular about that. I usually just push it down and then give it a light tap rather than burnish on this side. I'm gonna flip this onto my cutting board and I'm gonna burnish on this side. I'm stabilizing it with one hand so I don't shift it around and rub my pigment against the table so it's stable. And I've got my fist down. I'm pushing very hard and I'm burnishing that tape down. I'm doing the same thing on the bottom, and I'm overdoing the area where it's taped to make sure that I definitely get it on there and to not injure my painting. Okay, so now we're attached to this board, and we are going to attach this board to our mat board. So let's get our mat board attached to our backing board with our painting. I have made the little T stickers on the back of this board, and I've got my clean mat board. I'm going to line this up how I'd like it. Being careful and taking my time here. I'm not measuring this though because my painting itself is not perfectly square. And so I'm not expecting this presentation to be perfectly square. Also, the decal edge gives it some inconsistencies. I'm lightly going to tack it from this side, and I'm going to flip it over to burnish it. Burnish that tape down nice and good so it's secure. All right, and we are attached. Very good. And ready to go into our frame. I use these packets of Windex sheets because I don't want to spray Windex around in my studio space and get Windex speckles on my other paintings that are in progress or this one or anything. So, and these sheets are self-contained. Also, this Watercolor Society, like many, requires plexiglass. So this is plexiglass, not glass, which helps me to feel more better about shipping it because glass could shatter in a way that plexiglass, well, it's not immune to shattering, it's less likely. All right, so being careful to get my edges nice and clean glass. We definitely want to put our piece into cleaned up piece of plexi. And I'll clean the other side too, but maybe after it's all together. And so now I'm just going to let this hang out for 15 minutes or so and make sure that it has plenty of time to fully dry. I do not want to put this damp. I don't want to put my painting damp onto this because that would be a catastrophe. So I'll be back in about 15 minutes after this is dry. Okay, frame is clean and dry. Slide my mat board in, and before I put my backing board and secure it all closed, I'm going to check for this. That's on the front. I've got a piece of dust right there. Again. It's going to be so pretty. I'm so excited. All right, and we're going to get our backing board. It's just a piece of foam cord. For me, your frame might have come with a backing board. And I'm going to pull a couple of these closed. And something I always like to do to the back of my pieces is make sure that I, at the very least, have a business card secured onto there. somebody does buy my painting, I want to make sure they know how to get in touch with me. And I'll also put something on there that says, like, if you buy this, reach out to me and I'll send you the certificate of authenticity. To secure my business card to the painting in the corner, I'm going to use some packing tape, some clear packing tape. And we'll probably take 2 pieces. All right, so I've got my 2 pieces of packing tape. And I will just put half and half. I'm going to center this as well in this bottom corner. I'm just going to really secure that on there so that it's really on there good. Somebody needs to know who I am, or if my painting gets lost or anything, they know whose painting this is. Oh, cute, huh? All right, let's look at it and see. I'll flip it over and then maybe bring it over to the easel so you guys can see it on my easel. So excited. Let's see if we can get that light up there. Cool, huh? Pretty? Let's put it up on the easel so we can see. Here it is up on the easel. I'm over here so that it doesn't have reflections, but I can come bring you up on the details of the matte edges so you can see up close how pretty it is with that. Ignore my reflections, sorry. So you can see how pretty it is with the those edges, the sharp corner, the deckled edge, a little bit of a shadow. It's pretty, huh? And for a 16 by 20, it ends up being, 3 inches and a quarter of matte space, given also that decal edge space. And that's it, it's all done. Thanks for joining me today. And if you cut your own mat, will you let me know about it? And if you have more tips for me or for any of us about cutting mats, drop them in the comments. I'd love to chat and say hi. Thanks.